Hey there. So we're going to pick up where we left off last time. I know that I said last time that we were going to jump into setting up the multiplayer server and the client servers, but there was still quite a bit of prep work to do before getting there. So I felt the need to go over that in this episode before jumping into that next section of setting up the server client hosts, because I wanted to make sure to have the pickup boxes for the ammo and the health, and also have it so that you're shooting and so that when your bullet hits the zombie it does damage and the zombie disappears. So what I'll do is I'm going to switch over here and we're going to go over that right now. So we'll just give you a quick demo how this is going to run. So last time I showed you the exit button, join session, host session. Those aren't doing anything. And the training session jumps you into the game. So where we left off, your meters were at the top for your health and your ammo, and you had your character moving around with instructions on the screen and the zombie in the screen. But we're going to jump in now, and so that's basically where we're at, WSAD. And now you can see reflected on the screen we have 100 health and 10 ammo. So now if I come over here, I could jump in here. And I just picked up that ammo pack, and now you can see I've got 35. Now if I come over here, you can see the zombie on the screen. I don't have the ray cast from the zombie so he chases the player yet, but I do have so when he gets shot he takes damage. After 3 hits he will die with a particle effect of a blood splatter. There you go. So you just saw him get shot 3 times and die. And now my health's at 100. I'll pick up this health pack and it'll give me some more health. There we are, 125. Ammo at 32 because I picked up that pack. I have those when they leave the screen delete. I showed you that last time. And we'll exit the round. Exit the game. Okay, so now I'll show you how we did that. We'll start with the ammo packs and the pickup box. The health box is pretty much the same as the ammo pack, so I'll just show you the ammo pack here. Ammunition box, 2D. So it's simply this graphic of an ammunition box that I have here with a bullet on the top of it. If I zoom in here, you can see there's just a bullet on a box of ammo, and this is a collision box. So it's a area 2D node followed by a sprite 2D underneath that with a collision shaped 2D on it, and then an audio stream, which is that clicking sound you heard when I picked it up, kind of like a reload sound. So so there's an audio cue of it being picked up. And that's done by an audio stream player 2D. We haven't used those yet, but that's how you add simple sound effects into things. And they're pretty easy to use. So what we do have though is we do have a script attached. And what I'll do is I'll quickly just go over each of these components. So we have a sprite 2D, which is this image here, which is just a simple image of a box, nothing fancy. Then a collision shape 2D, just a square box, so when the player hits that box it then can trigger the script. Audio stream 2D with this gun reload sound dragged in, and I haven't done anything fancy on any of these sound things. I've just left it alone, but you could change the pitch, you could change the decibels. There's all sorts of things you can do. You can set up a curve so there's a sound, and as you get closer to it the sound gets louder. Where you use something like that is maybe if you were in a cave or a dungeon and there was like stalagmites dripping. As you got closer to them you would hear the dripping, or maybe a burning bonfire. As you got closer you would hear the burning bonfire. So there's lots of things for setting that up, but they're pretty simple to use. I don't feel that I really need to go into that. It's just a wave sound that I dragged in, ready to rock and roll. So yeah, so then the script. So we'll go over to the script and we will go to, just widen that a little bit here, ammunition box script. So basically what this does is it's a constant a preload of the player so that I can reference the player, because if you remember over here at the player script, this is where we set up the life and the ammo. So because we established both of those here, we need a reference to them. So what we did was over here in the ammunition script, we just brought in a constant of the player scene, and all you do is you just grab it here, drag it up, and it'll set it up as a preload. It'll automatically put this code in for you. Godot is really good at setting up your preloads or your references, your at, var, whatever's, or your constant, whatever scene you want to preload. So I've preloaded the player scene so that we can then reference it. So now we have a signal set up here, on body entered. So basically, again, that means that when the player or anything else collides with this collision box, it will then trigger this on the signal for the collision. And so what we have here is on body node TD, on body entered, and then in the script we've determined what that is, because the signal itself, if I come over here to the signal itself, let me go to here, this on body entered script, if I go here to edit, it doesn't actually let you choose in here. It'd be nice if in Godot they had a thing here where it could say, hey, choose what specifically enters or interacts with it. That would be nice if they added that as an option in here when they do an update. So if anyone from Godot is listening, it'd be kind of cool if you just added the option to point to it. So you could say, hey, if bullet entered, or hey, if player entered, or whatever. But they don't have that. They just let you set up which script the signal's attached to. That's fine. We've attached that script to the ammunition box. I'm just going to cancel that out. Go back to my inspector again. So that signal's set up there. So then in the script, I've set up just a simple if command. If body name equals player. So that's basically if the body that enters this is called player, then perform the rest of this script. And so what we've got in the script is body.ammo. So that's basically this body, a variable attached to this body, which is the player, which we preloaded up here, is called ammo. Then we're going to plus equals 25 points to it. So it's basically going to add 25 to the variable attached to that player node, which if I come down here to the script, that player node is called ammo right here. It'll add 25 to that. So that's an important thing to know, because you can specify. Because if you don't specify, we'll come back here to this ammunition box, then it's anything enters that node and collides. So if a zombie enters that node and collides, it's going to add 25 to whatever, or it's going to interact with it. And you don't want that. You want it to only interact if it's a player pickup. So if player interacts with it, then plus minus 25 points. Print got ammo, that's for troubleshooting, that's down here in the output. Then print body ammo, so it'll actually tell me if I come down to here and scroll up. It'll be way up here because I put troubleshooting for everything. Bullet direction. Sorry, bear with me. A lot of troubleshooting text in here, which I no longer need at this point. But so there's one, so that same thing for the health box. Close enough example. Got health. The new health value is 125. So this would be the got ammo, and then it would be the new value, which would be 35, because I think we start with 10. So that's what that works. And then it also plays that audio player sound that we have attached to the player. Or no, sorry, that's attached to this. So it'll play this particular sound, which as we come over to here, it's this gun reload sound. Then it's going to await, get tree, create timer, 0.85 timeout. And what that's in there for is so that if anything happens, it doesn't just, because it'll finish playing this audio sound before it deletes itself. Because otherwise what will happen if you don't put this await timer in here, it'll just delete itself immediately, and that sound won't actually finish playing. You'll get a tiny bit of it, or none of it will play at all. And you can play around with this timeout depending on how long your audio file is, right? So for this particular sound, it's oh, let me open that up. See that sound? So it's 1.58 seconds. So I have it play just 0.85 of a second. So it just plays this first little click bit, and then that's all I need for the pickup. It doesn't play the whole sound. But that's fine. So that does a little bit of a thing to give you an audio note that you picked up the ammo, and then it deletes itself out of the scene. So I'll just show you how that works again in real time here. Training. Come down here. Pick up the box. It'll play for that 0.85 of a second of that sound. Then it'll delete itself. And this 10 will get 25 added to it. I don't know if you heard that or not. It was pretty quiet, but it did the sound. All right, so moving on. So that's how the ammunition box and the health box work. So I'll just show you the health box real quick. And 2D, we won't spend nearly as much time on it. Where is it? Training. 2D. So the health box is down here. Same thing. I go to the health box. Collision box, that health box, and an audio stream, and it's the same audio stream. And then if I look at the script for that, and I come down here to health box, exactly the same script, except it references the variable life instead, adds 25 to it, and does print health, and displays the full life stat. So there's nothing really different there. Timer 0.85, Q free. Because I'm using the same sound, so there's not much more to know there. So they're both pretty much identical. Okay, moving on from that, we now have the zombie set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the zombie. And then we're going to go 2D on the zombie. That's the player. I want the zombie. So what we've got here is we've got the zombie. We've got the animated sprite 2D. We've got the collision shape 2D, which is the circle. Let me just move this over and zoom in. And then we've got a raycast 2D, which we're not using yet. That'll be how, I think I explained this in the last one, that'll be how the zombie moves towards the player and the player gets too close. You'll be able to see him and move towards him. And then I've got audio stream player 2D, which excuse me, a little hiccup there. Which is this audio zombie sound right here. And we use that whenever it gets shot, it'll play that sound. And then we've got the zombie script, so we'll go over to scripts. And I'll go to my zombie script. So what we've got is I've got the speed set up here at 0 because he's not moving yet, and I'll do that when I get around to moving it. But I don't need him to move for setting up the multiplayer and the client player. It's better for troubleshooting to not have him move yet, so I can test everything. So we'll add that probably in the last episode after we set up the multiplayer, so that we have a fully playable game. But for right now, I'm not having him move at all. I'm not having the raycast do anything yet. So basically on function ready, I just have print zombie spawned and zombie durability equals. And that should be in here if I scroll this all the way up. Right here, zombie spawned, zombie durability equals 3. Because how I have it set up is that the zombie needs to take 3 hits in order to die. So we set those up down here. So now we've got a signal. So since we set those up, here's the durability set here. So I'm going to actually change that to 5. Just to show you. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick, we'll go over this and then I'll go in and quickly show you that. So that'll take now 5 shots to kill the zombie instead of 3. So here I've loaded a constant blood splatter as a preload. And so what that is that's a particle effect. And it is, I'll show you that in a minute here, but that's a particle effect. And I haven't shown you particle effects yet. but they're a really good way to do like bullets or energy attacks or blood splatters, or even environmental effects and things. So they're a really good way to roll, and I'll show you that as we move on here. But I'm preloading that as a constant so that I can reference it in this script. So that's been preloaded, and I've also preloaded the bullet. And now the bullet, I've preloaded that instead of as a constant, as a variable. I've loaded that as a variable into the script because we're going to need to reference it as a variable to adjust it. And then I've set up constant speed of 0 for the zombie. Like I told you before, zombie speed is set to 0 because we don't want him moving yet. So now in the function ready, I just have my troubleshooting in here, which I probably don't need those anymore. So I could, in fact, just anything I've set up as a text on the screen for debugging, I've just put a comment beside them, debug. Just so I know to remove those later, but I've left them in here because I want you to see my debugging process. So then we scroll down here and we've set up a function now. So this function is on area entered, area 2D void. And so basically this is just a collision, so that if anything collides with it, that it'll detect the collision. And now I fought with this, and I'll show you why later, but I fought with this at the bullet when I was setting up the bullet and its collisions. And this is something I'm going to share with you and save you a bunch of frustration. But it's basically all to do with where you put things in these orders and how they're aligned. And I'll go over that, like I say, when I go over the bullet. But anyway, if area entered name equals bullet, like we referenced in the last one for the player, it's going to detect only if the bullet enters it. Because what we want to do later on is if the player enters it, we want the player to take damage. But we don't want the zombie to take damage if the player enters it. So that way, that'll be the zombie mauling the player, right? We only want bullets to damage the zombie. So that's why we have it set up here for equals bullet. So it's basically going to be the bullet hits them. Oh, and I didn't do a pound debug. Sorry, didn't do a debug on that. So I just added the comment in because it's really important when you're designing your games. It saves you so much effort when you're debugging to have these debug statements as a print down here in the output, because then as you're working through these things, seeing why they don't work, if you just put a print check on there with a little note beside it for yourself, you can remove them afterwards, but they sure save you a lot of grief, and especially if you're going to reuse scripts. So if I want to reuse the script in another game, copy, paste it, move it over, not have to rewrite it again. Although when you're first learning, I highly recommend rewriting and just referencing because it really gets you better with the GDScript code. However, if you just want to reuse them over again, if you're making the same type of game or a sequel or you're doing a series of them or whatever, it's really good to put these debuggings in because then it helps you figure out why something isn't working. Because if you don't see it down here, you know it's not hitting that call and it's not making that return on the code and something's wrong. So I really recommend that. But I digress. Back to here. So if durability is greater than or equal to 1, which is basically a check to see if it's still alive, durability minus equals 1, which means subtract 1, apply the damage, and then play that sound of that zombie over here that we had, which is right here, this audio stream sound effect, make that zombie sound when he gets hit. So he goes, "Oh, heard." And then also another debugging, print after hit the amount of the durability, so we can actually see it go down. So it'll go from 5 to 4 to 3 down in here as we hit it, and I'll show you that after. And then if durability is less than or equals 0, then play the blood spawn that we referenced up here when we did this preload for the blood spawn as a constant. Then it'll play that because it's already preloaded. But we also want to then queue free, so it'll play that and then it'll delete the zombie. And then check if the colliding body is a bullet. No, I did that up here. I don't need to worry about that. That's in here in the code. That one probably doesn't need to be there. Ignore that. It shouldn't be in there. It was just a comment from earlier on, and I'd carried it down. Moving on. Function spawn blood splat. So that's, here we go. Spawn blood splatter. So we set that up as a call. So as a function. So down here is that function where we set up to call that. We set up a variable. Blood splatter instance equals blood splatter instantiate. So it's creating it from this reference point up here. Then we're setting this blood splatter instance to be at the global position, which equals the global position of this object here, this global zombie object. So basically what we're saying is, because you can't just declare those right here in one line, or you might be able to, but it's not clean. Best thing to do is call it as set it up as a function, then to call that function. So we're setting that function up here, we're calling that function here, but this function needs to reference this to instantiate it, and that's where we set that up here with this constant. So I hope all that makes sense to you. And then once we've set that up, get parent add child blood splatter instance. So basically we're just setting this child up at this global position of the zombie. That's all we're doing here. And then we're also printing for debugging blood splatter spawn, which we don't actually need, but that's what we set that up. So that basically that's it. That's the zombie. And now there will be another function that we set up here, which will be tied to that raycast. So if the player moves into the raycast, the zombie will then move towards the player. We may actually change it from a raycast to a cast shape instead. But I'll play around with that little trial and error and see what I like better. Each one works a little different. One in different circumstances, one can be smoother than the other. But I'll play around with that when I get to it. We'll cover that probably in the very last video. All right. So there, we've set up that's the script for the zombie. So for a bad guy, so pretty simple. We're just missing the part for where he attacks the player. Some simple AI. Now, the next one to set up would be the blood splatter or the bullet. And so what I'll do is I'll go into the bullet next, because I told you I'd tell you where I ran into some issues with it. So if I go into the bullet, oh no, it was on the player, but it was on the player where I set that up. So the bullet is pretty simple. The bullet is just an area 2D type. I originally had it a rigid 2D, but I didn't like it. It was bouncing around more like a ping pong ball, and I didn't like the way that it actually affected the zombie, so I changed it to an area 2D. And the big thing is when it's easy to change stuff. You just go right click, and then you come down here to change type. But if you change a type, it's really important to come in here to the script. So if I come into this bullet script, and at the very top, change it to match. So if this was a rigid body 2D, you'd want this up here, area 2D, to be rigid body 2D. So that's important. If you change type, you got to come into the corresponding script and change that type. Simple thing, but a lot of people get stuck troubleshooting that because they're like, well, why isn't it working? My script doesn't want to work anymore. And it's like, yeah, because you didn't change that up top, and now you got an error. And the error is not very forthcoming as to why. Sometimes it can be kind of convoluted. So just know that if you change if the type of object, which if you hover over it tells it, area 2D, your script that is attached to that has to match it. So area 2D matches area 2D. Nothing special there. So here's where I set up an add export variable so that I can come over here and just up and down. So if I change this up or down, so I can go to 802, 803, 801, 800. You can actually change that here, and then when you run it, it'll take that function. That's what an add export does. It allows you to just use the tool menu and to adjust it in there. I don't know how great that is. I haven't run into a circumstance where it isn't just as easy to change it in the script. However, it's there. It's a nice feature. I can see there would probably be lots of use for it. I just haven't needed it yet. So then we come down here and we set up the function ready, which basically just sets the direction of the bullet based on the player's rotation. And we just do that by referencing the global rotation get rotation. So global transform dot get rotation. You can do global rotation dot get rotation. You can do global position get position. But in this case, what we're doing is we're simply getting all the global transforms. We're loading them all in, and then we're just pulling the rotation out of that, and then we're printing it in the debug screen so I can see the numbers from that. And then we've turned monitoring on to true. Now what monitoring does is it's actually not to do with the rotation, it's to do with the collisions. So it basically just lets you know if something collides with this area 2D. And so we set monitoring into true. Then we come down here, function process delta, void. So we're basically setting up the function for the process delta that you've seen over and over again. And all we're doing here is we're setting the position to the vector 2 cosine rotation, sine rotation, times bullet speed times delta. So basically it's going to grab the rotation from these global transforms. It's going to grab the sine on the rotation to kind of figure out what angle it's got to travel at. Then it's going to times it by the bullet speed times delta to normalize it over time. Remember, delta normalizes over time. Then we're going to come down here to this function, which is a signal. So what we're doing for on visible screen enabler 2D, which is this guy here. And basically what this does is it just checks if something's still on the screen. So what we've got happening here is basically if the bullet leaves the screen, it deletes the bullet. That's all this does. So you just add this here as a 2D node, and then you simply set up a function for it and tell it to queue free, which just basically says, hey, if this item, this bullet, leaves the screen, delete it. And then that's a good way to not overload your physics, keep things optimized, and to not have a bajillion things happening off screen that the physics processors are still trying to track in memory and in GPU memory. And that's especially important in like bullet hells and also multiplayer where you've got like 4 or 5 guys running around shooting a whole bunch of bullets around. So that's a really important thing, just some simple optimization. I recommend people use it. It's a good start for optimization. There's more things to do to optimize. We don't really need it in this simple a game where you can have 2 or 3 guys running around shooting a few bullets at a time. Not necessary. Any modern CPU can handle that. Even a potato can handle that. So anyway, but that's what that does, and it's just a really good practice to get into. Cleaning things up when they leave the screen. Alright, it also prevents any physics issues later on. So say you've got something where something used to collide down screen, down range a bit. Well, if you fire a bunch of bullets and they don't delete themselves up when they go off a screen and they make contact with something and accidentally trigger an event, and now your player gets down to that screen and the event's already gone and triggered, and your player has no idea how to continue on because you think there's a bug in the game, but no, you actually triggered something because this traveled downrange and affected it. So it's just a good practice to use this visible on-screen enabler and clean up your bullets and things. Same with your monsters. When they leave the screen, clean them up too. Okay, next then we come down here to a new function, print direction, and this is basically just to print the vector 2, the cosine and the sine on the screen so that I could track that the bullet was traveling in the right direction. You don't need this. I used it for troubleshooting methods. If you're running into any issues, use it. This one didn't actually help me with what my issue was, but it was a good debugging thing to try, so we won't really spend any time on that. But it basically just prints the direction on the screen. If I scroll down here, the first bullet shooting, I'm just scroll it down, show you what it looks like at least. Where'd it go? Oh, because I didn't, last time I ran the game I didn't shoot anything, so yeah, okay, never mind. So anyway, yeah, that just prints the direction on the screen. You don't need to worry about that. I'll point it out when we run the game next. Then we have another signal, function on area entered, and this is object hit. And so basically this is just if the bullet hits any collision zone, print object hit so we can actually just see it. And then down here we specify again when it hits the zombie so that it's not just hitting anything. And then print bullet hit zombie if it actually hits the zombie, and then queue free delete the bullet. So that's all that is. pretty simple script at this point in time for the bullet, and it basically just yeah. So then the next thing is, I think I declared in the zombie script if the collide with bullet do damage. Collision detected bullet, yeah, right here, if durability. So if it hits, do the damage. I declared that in the zombie script rather than the bullet script. All right. Now, the next thing is the blood splatter, which is... No, actually, I'm going to go back to the player. Let's just go back to the player, and I'm going to show you what I was talking about where I was troubleshooting. So, this marker 2D. So, what this marker 2D is you use it to allocate. I'm just going to move it here. I'm going to move it out. So, you can use it to allocate a point. It's basically just a crosshair that's set up to allocate a point, and I'm just setting it right there. So it's basically right close to the tip of the gun, and it's outside of my collision zone. And what I've used it for is to set up where the bullet spawns. So when we go into the did I have it in the bullet script? Spawn blood splatter. No, it's in the player script. Sorry, I'll go back to the player. So it is down here. Those are input actions. We went over all that last time. Basically, our movement, left, right, the UE right, the UE left, whatever. Those are all set up with the WSED and the arrow keys, and they're set up. In case you don't know, they are in project settings, and it is just input map, and then they're just set up in here. You can set up whatever you want. And then I have spacebar set up to shoot. And it's right here. The UI accept is the default motion, and I just have that set up for the spacebar. So if that action is okay, so this is where there's a few things different. So basically, is action pressed? It maintains action while pressed. So I'll keep moving right if pressed. I'll keep moving left if pressed. I'll keep moving down. I'll keep moving up. So that's what is action pressed. Now we got that direction, move and slide. We've gone over this. Look at global position. So the direction normalized, see this here, string animated 2D marker. So we put a reference to that up top, right here. So we pulled that in as a reference. And then if we're pointing at that, the direction times speed is now pointing at it, right? So the direction is normalized to look at the global position of this animated marker. So wherever that animated marker is going to be designated the direction we're looking at. And that's important for shooting and spawning the bullet. So then we'll come down here. And there, if direction sector 0, play walk. If it's moving, or else player shoot. And that's just kind of, I'm using the player shoot as the idle, as the player idle mechanism. If input is action just pressed. So instead of action pressed, it's just pressed. That looks for it to be pressed once and basically released. So it's basically you're just hitting the button once. Then it's going to call this function shoot bullet, which we declare down here. So again, remember with the zombie, you call on a function and you set that function up down below. And then here it just sets the movement, sets the animated sprite rotation to the angle, and plays the player walk. So that's basically just to move forward. And I just have in here an else pass just to cover myself so it doesn't get hung up on a loop. If it runs into some weird glitch, it'll just continue on. Function shoot bullet now. If ammo is less than or equal to 0, set can shoot to false. Way up here we declared can shoot. We declared ammo, we declared life, we declared all those things. We declared fire bullet rate and bullet kill. I may not be using one of those at this point in time. I may have been setting it up and went a different method. But basically, so the can shoot equals false, then print click down here in the debugging so that we know we can't shoot because he's out of ammo. Else if can shoot, so basically if can shoot's true, which we declared it to be true to begin with because we had ammo, play, player shoot. Then var bullet equals bullet scene instantiate, and that's here, that's the bullet shooting. Global transforms, animated 2D, 2D marker, global transform. So it's basically saying create this bullet at this marker 2D position, and if we go back to marker 2D, sorry, that's the bullet. We're going to go to the player. There's our marker 2D. So basically right at the tip of this gun, more or less, just offset a little bit, we're going to create a bullet here. So that's what that's doing. Back to script. And yeah, so then it's going to add the child as a bullet to a child of the parent, which is that marker, or at the position of that marker. And it's also going to play audio stream, which we've put here, which is a pistol shot. And then it's going to await. Again, I created a timer so it would finish playing the animation. Sorry, it's going to print bang down here as part of our troubleshooting. Then it changes can shoot to false. And then what I've done is I've set up this timer at 0.5 of a second. Once it's set to false, and then set it to true again afterward. So that basically means that you just shot and it removes a bullet, and now you can't shoot for 0.5 of a second because you've just shot, and then it changes can shoot again to true, and then it prints timer is done as a debugging. So basically that's your cooldown. That's basically bang, okay, cooldown, can't shoot for half a second, okay, now we can shoot again. So that's what that sets up. That's the player script. The last thing to go over is the blood splatter, which we'll come over here to 2D. So this is a GPU particle effect. And so what it is, if I click on GPU particle effect, I've assigned this texture to it. And then I've come down here, and that's just a node type. It's just a node to add under a basic 2D node. Nothing special. And then under here, I just set the lifetime. I set how many of these, so we're spawning 3 of these images. And then we're kind of phasing it in and out. And we've got a speed scale, we've got some explosiveness set. And so basically it just comes in and fades out again as a multi-blood splatter thing. I'm not very good with these yet. I've only used them a couple times, so I don't do a lot of them yet, but they're very, very good. There's CPU and there's GPU. I just use CPU because it's a really simple PNG. I don't need anything fancy. You can use GPU if you're going to be doing a lot more, like instead of spawning 3 things on screen, you're going to be spawning 300, and you're going to be doing that in multiple instances. Then you probably want to use a GPU particle 2D rather than a CPU particle 2D. Each one has its use, and they're both good. But this is more designed for running on a potato. So that's why I've set that up. But that's particle effect, basically. And then there's all sorts of things. Just play around with them. Play around with all these settings. Figure out how to use them. Start simple. Maybe start with like the Godot cube or something, and just play around with it. That's all I can tell you. And then I have a timer here. And I've got a 0.5 of a second because I use that timer in my script here to blood splatter script. Basically calls on the timer. When it times out, it deletes itself. Pretty simple. There's nothing fancy in the script at all, but in order to delete itself, you need that timer, and then you need to queue free after the timer expires. So now I'll show you how all that works in game again. We'll go into the training. So if I move down, up, you can see it over here doing the text, left, right, and if I scroll here to the top of this, you can see it spawned, durability equals 5, and back into the game, I'll come down here. I'm going to empty my ammo. You can see if I push it real quick, it's still only every half second. I'm at 0. I can't shoot anymore. Pick up the ammo. Picked up 25. Oh, something's not right. My ammo's not shooting again. Darn. I have a bug in my ammo box here somewhere. Or possibly on my player. I actually had this before and I thought I had fixed it. It might be in the player script. Was something in here. Can't you went back to true? If ammo is less than 0, yes, okay. Oh, I think I just had to add in here. Else can shoot. Might just have to add another. Let me just try this real quick. If ammo is greater than or equal to 1, enter. Can shoot equals true. Maybe. I didn't do it. I'm probably yeah, let's try that. Expected statement found else instead. Can I just do another LF? No, I got an issue there. Oh, for one thing, that needs to be there. If ammo is yeah, that should work now. Alright, let me just save this. Sorry for the digression. Let's give it a try again. I just want to check that out. Now it's not letting me shoot at all. So I messed something else up there. I'm not sure what. I'll put it in another spot later. Let me just... That's better. Okay, so anyway, I'll fix that later. I know there's an easy fix, something like that for it. I just missed it somehow. So I'll just pick up that box again. Then I'll come over here. I'll shoot the zombie 3 times. And if you watch down here, you'll see the life of the zombie go down. I missed him. There, hit him. He played that sound. Damage is 4. Damage left 3. Damage left 2. Damage left 1. And there's the blood splatter, and he dies. Then we come down here, and we pick up the health. Health is 125. Cleared the round. Teleport back to the main menu. Alright. So I know this one's gone on for a little while. It's pretty long, but hopefully that gets you everything you need to get caught up, and I hope you learned a few things. I will troubleshoot that one bug, just doing it on the fly. Kind of hard when I'm trying to do a YouTube. Sorry for wasting your time just on that little bit of troubleshooting. I will figure that out. I think it's a pretty simple fix, and I'll have it corrected for the next video. But the next video, I'm going to jump into setting up the multiplayer, the server, and the client. So I'll see you then. Until then, have a great day.